Let's get into this week's Tour Confidential bonus topic presented by FootJoy, the #1 shoe in golf. IOC member Barry Meister made some headlines over the weekend when he said golf doesn't necessarily belong in the Olympics if the best players aren't going to show up. He also commented that it's appalling that the top names in golf are not headed to Rio. Josh, what are your thoughts on this? Does golf belong in the Olympics even if the stars of the game aren't going to be there?
Well, I got to say, I've been a bit of a skeptic about golf in the Olympics from the get-go. The Olympics is really supposed to be about the pinnacle of achievement in your sport. And when you think about it, we already have 4 events in golf that most of the professionals, the top players in the world, regard as the pinnacle of achievement. So it always felt a little bit to me like shoehorning a sport into a game into a competition that didn't quite fit.
Peter, I can't help but think that golfers are just getting the short end of the stick here a little bit. A lot of people are criticizing them, but Zika is a very serious thing at this point, and no one will be spending more time outside than golfers during the Olympics.
Yeah, no one's going to know, right, for sure what the motivations of these players who are dropping out was, whether it's Zika or whether it's that they just don't want to tax their bodies any more than they have to. I mean, that's a lot of travel. The Rio infrastructure is not exactly sound at this point. There's story after story about the issues that they're having. And we have 4 major championships. We have the FedEx Cup, and this year we have the Ryder Cup. So the Olympics doesn't offer us anything different, really, from what the rest of the tour offers us, which is, I think, why a gold medal does not have the same sort of appeal, because these guys are playing for gold medals against the best players in the world every week.
Mm-hmm. Josh, is it truly a complete disaster at this point? I mean, there are still plenty of players in the top 10 and top 15 in the world who haven't backed out at this point.
Well, I think, from the IOC standpoint, it's somewhat of a commercial disaster if the biggest names don't go, and sadly that's what we've come to. I mean, the Olympics long ago stopped being a solely amateur pursuit where you compete for the joy of the competition and the honor of competing for your country. There's so much more involved here, and I think, looking back now, it's not surprising that some of the top players would have backed out for all the reasons that Pete enumerated. But could we have predicted Zika? No. Could we have predicted that a lot of the top players in the world would have balked? Absolutely.
I can't help but think also, when golf gets another chance in 2020 in Tokyo, the turnout could be very different than this year.
Sure. As Josh said, and as Josh said in his written piece, when we were discussing this, if this had happened at a different venue, if we had debuted at the 2012 games or different games, maybe it would be different. I think the disaster waiting to happen that I think a lot of people perceive Rio to be is certainly weighing on the minds of these players. But also, no one grew up wanting to play for a gold medal. But in 4 years, we'll have another group of young players who saw, hopefully, a Jordan Spieth or someone like that compete and play well and win, and say, I want to do that. And part of the point is to grow the games in other places like China, some of these other markets where golf hasn't hit in the same way. That, as much as anything, is why people are disappointed. People like Jack Nicklaus are disappointed because no one has been a greater ambassador to the game than Jack has, and I think he understands the stakes. I would like them to want to grow the game and be ambassadors for the game in a way that only the Olympics in some ways can bring us in terms of a platform.